Greetings and welcome to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, thanking you for joining us today and for being subscribers of Cignal TV. Malaking bagay po yan sa amin and we appreciate your support. We also want to thank our friends, our viewers who catch us on facebook.com/onenewsph, and of course those who watch us on YouTube, whether it's the live airing or the replays which happens in the afternoon. Thank you very much for being with us today. June 16, 2022. Aba, tingnan mo na nga naman yan. Thursday na, 1 week to go. Magkikita na kami ng aking anak. Okay. It's been almost 2 years that I have not seen my daughter who is studying in the Netherlands. And wow, time flies by. Anyway, today, let's start the day with our daily starter. Medyo mahaba-haba po, pero I think it is significant for all of you. And our daily starter comes from the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 15. And context here, ladies and gentlemen, it is when Joshua basically confronted his kababayans and said, mamili kayo. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, kung hindi nyo nais o hindi ka nais-nais sa inyong maglingkod sa Panginoon, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods of your ancestors, sino ba sasambahin nyo? Yung mga Diyos-Diyosa ng mga ninuno nyo sa beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, yung mga Diyos-Diyosa ng mga nakakapaligid sa inyo in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Now you might say, Cito, grabe naman, napaka-religious naman, sobrang biblical naman ng word, ng daily starter mo for today. I will not be apologetic about it, because in this day and age, after nearly 2 years or 2 years of COVID pandemic, you would think that many people will get their priorities right. You would imagine that many people would say, hindi pala tamang gawing Diyos yung trabaho, hindi pala tama gawing Diyos yung pera o yung ambisyon o yung career o yung boyfriend o girlfriend. You would think that many people would come to terms with their mortality, with the fact that you are only made of flesh. But as exemplified by many of our political leaders, they continue to bow to their gods of ambition and to their desire or need for relevance. Meron ngang isa currently, kumbaga malapit na kayong magkita ni Lord, namumulitika ka pa. Anyway, yun lang po, no? Just remember that choice that Joshua gave his people. Mamili kayo. Are you going to bow to the God of money, God of career, God of politics, or are you going to bow to your God Almighty, from whom your life and your provision comes? Okay? As for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. Okay, yun lang po naman. Okay, now, let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star and let's see the developments that's happening on the front page. June 16, 2022, Alert Level 1 stays. Okay, this puts an end to the discussion, haka-haka, that we might go to Alert Level 2. The IATF has announced that Alert Level 1 stays until June 30, or when President Rodrigo Duterte leaves the office of the president. Okay. At the top of the front page, the header taxi group seeks 20 pesos hike in flag down rate. Okay, yan na po. Kumbaga, no, inaasahan na yan. Pero as always, deny, cancel ang LTFRB. Meanwhile, the good news is, after threatening that he will go after him, that OIC Lieutenant General Vicente Danao will go after the hit and run driver, driver Jose Antonio San Vicente, yung SUV driver in hit and run, has surrendered. Okay, surrender yan po, no? Just a short commentary. It turns out, according to the LTO, this young man already has 3 reckless driving violations and citation. Reckless driving po, hindi po illegal parking, obstruction, speeding, reckless driving. Okay? In the United States, there is such a law as the 3 hits and you're out. Doon sa ibang states in the US, makatatlong ganyan ka, kanselado na yung lisensya mo, kulong ka pa. Someone I know personally in the US spent 30 days in jail because of that. Okay, so anyway, finally, the SUV driver in hit and run surrenders, and chances are, mapaparapol yung kanyang SUV na yan. Okay. Meanwhile, the photo in the center of the front page are photos of, or is a photo of a particular bus in Bus Bay 13. Okay, at the Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange that launched its Davao City one-way bus ride. Medyo ewan ko, nakakatakot naman po ito. Hello, PITX. Number 13 na, one-way trip pa. Medyo mag-iisip ka yan. No? Okay, but anyway, congratulations. Meron na raw pong bus trip, one-way tourist bus going to Davao. It will cost you 3,680 with an estimated travel time of 3 days and 2 nights. I was discussing this with my wife and we wondered how much time of the 3 days, 2 nights is eaten up by having to wait at the ferry in Allen. Okay? In Allen, yung bang controversial ferry station or port in Allen na kung saan kilo-kilometro ang pila ng mga bus. We will continue to monitor that forsaken port or terminal. Okay. Meanwhile, the government has listed father or ex-father Luis Halandoni. Hindi na siya pare, nag-asawa na siya. And 10 others as terrorists under the Anti-Terrorism Council, which passed the motion, the resolutions. Sabit na yung 10 mga taong involved in terrorism. Abu Sayyaf, Jalami o Jamali, whatever, and the NPA. Okay. Request for mask policy change instead of defiance is better. Okay, sabi nga, sabi raw po ni the Department of Justice Secretary, mas maigi sana kung nakiusap. It would have been better if Cebu Governor Gwendolyn Garcia had simply requested for mask policy change instead of defiance. Ika nga di ba? Mas madali ba, mas maigi daw. Pero sometimes forgiveness is easier to get than permission, according to one of our bishops. Meanwhile, that photo on the lower left is a photo of Philippine Star officials headed by Miguel Belmonte and Lucien Di Choco, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think that is si Sir Lucien yan. Di Choco, EVP of Philippine Star, along with Secretary Mon Lopez as they launched their nakaka-local, okay, program, an advocacy program of the Philippine Star Media Group for micro, small, and medium enterprises. Okay. Last two, Guanzon gets COMELEC nod as party list representative. Okay, he was granted and approved. Takot lang nila kay Guanzon. Chicken prices up. DA blames low production. Ayan po, no? We will tackle that in the coming days or next week perhaps dahil mailap yung tiga-BAI at yung tiga-DA. Pero yan po, sinisisi ng Department of Agriculture ang pagtaas ng presyo ng manok with low production. Of course, bababa ang produksyon ng manok. Why? That's the question. Why? Is it easy to get chicks? No. Is it easy to get feeds? No. Are feeds cheaper? No. Okay? So, yun po. Puro po no. So, no production. Ayun. Okay. Now, let's bring in our first guest. He is an ecotourism consultant, community tourism organizer who initiated the Boho Aluginsan Ecotourism Association in Cebu and developed the Aluginsan River Eco-Cultural Tour. He sits in the board of ecotourism for Eco Explorations and the Bangkok-based Asian Ecotourism Network. He has won several awards for his efforts in promoting tourism in the country, namely Philippine National Tourism Award, Most Outstanding Alumnus in the Field of Community Service, University of San Carlos, University of California, Berkeley Bears Environmental Leadership Fellow, and one of the Inspiring Filipinos Award, Philippine Airlines. Okay. And he was the Tourism Provincial Officer of Cebu until 2019. Let's bring in Boboi Costas, Ecotourism Consultant. Boboi, good morning. Maayong adlaw ba?
Maayong adlaw. Good morning, Cito, and maayong adlaw sa atong to all our viewers for agenda.
Sa imong tanan, sabi nga ng nanay ko. Anyway, pasensya ka na sa Bisaya kong halo-halo, Boboi. Thank you for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
You were one of the suggested interviewees of June Ventura, particularly because of your track record in ecotourism. Now, you know, I've been in tourism, but more on the destination development or facility development in Palawan. And back then, pinagtatawanan ako ng mga tao kasi we put up a small place after building Club Paradise, which is now Discovery Paradise. We put up our own bed and breakfast. And pinagtatawanan ako ng mga sosyal kasi yung mga turista, dinadala ko sa barangay, dinadala ko sa lubluban ng Kalabaw, etc., sa Batis. And they're saying, Cito, these people came here for the white sand beach, etc. Sabi ko, go ask them. They seem to like it. Now, is that what you mean by ecotourism?
Yes, partly, no? Because ecotourism is actually a type of tourism that happens in natural areas, but it has to satisfy may mga requirements tayo when you say ecotourism. No? Number one is there something about conservation in it? Are you protecting or conserving let's say a lake, a forest, or a mountain range? Number two is you should involve the local community, meaning the grassroots communities who are maybe residing within the fringes of a protected area, for example, or, well, most of the protected areas in the Philippines have communities, no, outside within the fringes. Number three is, is it a business? Otherwise, if it's not viable, if you cannot sustain it, then what's the use of going into tourism? Number four is the community showing its culture. It's the community traditions, the collective rituals, food, farming and fishing rituals, and even the traditional performances. And the fifth one is ecotourism should respect the carrying capacity or the minimum or the maximum number of visitors allowed in a particular destination so as to limit the negative impacts of tourism. So that satisfies ecotourism. So yung sa'yo, sa Palawan, maybe, no? I mean, it satisfies some of the requirements.
It involves the local residents.
Yes.
It features the local sceneries and natural resources. It
Yes.
was a business, or well, we tried to make a business of it, pero hindi tumagal dahil nagka-kidnapan after tinayo namin, nagkaroon na ng kidnapan sa Puerto Princesa. If you remember, although we were up north, medyo nawalan ng turista, natuyo at turista sa Palawan in those days. But anyway, those are the challenges of tourism. But we were just showing one of the videos of your pet project. Now, what are the things that operators, investors may be doing wrong? Because madali yung doing right pero marami tayong ginagawang we don't realize is wrong. Ganun nga yung tinuturo ko sa pagbababoy. Pag nagbibigay ako ng mga lecture, ay mali. Di ba? What are they doing wrong?
Well, based on my experience, I think the most important thing is involving the local community itself. Because if you want your business, especially for the private sector, if you want their businesses to be sustainable, to be resilient, then they must bring into the picture the local communities. Because by and large, basing on my observation, most of the tourism businesses in the Philippines are owned by, private individuals. I mean, or businesses. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you look at the bottom line, does it involve the people there, the local communities? Because otherwise, you won't be stimulating what we call village economy, no? Or you want to bring in prosperity.
Yeah, because I've seen several resorts who tried. They weren't happy with the caliber of competency ng mga locals kasi mga locals were never trained.
Yes.
So nag-import sila. Nagpasok sila ng mga tao. And what happened was it was not sustainable kasi you have to pay more for people to relocate. And then you create an agitated local community who nagseselos, bakit kami walang trabaho, and you create enemies in the community while you have a financial challenge by bringing in outsiders to operate.
Yes, that's a correct observation. Based on my experience to Cito, I always believe in the the potential of grassroots communities, especially in the Philippines. I think it's just a matter of building their capacity to manage their tourism businesses. I mean, if they want to pursue, and if they want to involve themselves in tourism, no? And even private sector, I think that's also one of the responsibilities of, if you're into the tourism business and you come from the private sector, it's also one of your major responsibilities to train guides. I mean, not only guides, but to train all the manpower that maybe your resort will be hiring, no? Or your business will be hiring. So I always believe in capacity building, and from capacity building, you can always discover tourism local leaders, which who will get themselves involved, no, and go the extra mile in protecting their communities, because they're from there, no. I mean, they know the community like the back of their hands, and they know how to protect their resources, both cultural resources and natural resources, and with that, there will be more active involvement, active engagement of the local community, which leads to active participation, there will be active planning, active implementation of all the projects, which leads to minimizing the negative impacts of tourism.
Okay, now we were watching the video of your project in Aluginsan, over Aluginsan River. May napansin ako, merong hanging bridge. Now, yung introduction of technology or non-native material, is that violative of ecotourism? Kasi may conflict. When we were in Palawan, we built a half-kilometer walking bridge made of mangrove. Because sabi naman namin, ang argument naman namin is, if we don't make this half-kilometer bridge, people will keep cutting the mangroves to make bigger sections for their bangkas to go in. So parang mamili kayo, payagan nyo kaming magtayo ng tulay para made of mangroves and we generate jobs, or payagan ninyo yung mga bangkero pagpuputulin yung mga mangroves. Where are you on that issue?
Well, number one, one of the elements to consider when you develop a destination is, of course, the attractiveness of the destination, meaning is it safe and accessible to visitors? So health and safety of the visitor should be a concern, or it's a priority of the destination. And by building infrastructure, it actually enhances the image of the place. Now, the only limitation there is when you go into sustainable tourism, when you go into ecotourism, you have to use traditional materials. By traditional materials, I mean, local indigenous materials, building materials found in the Philippines, like, for example, bamboos or wood or whatever.
Rattan.
Or rattan. No, I think rattan is bawal na ngayon, no?
Bawal na ba? Sorry.
Yeah, any wood that is repurposed, let's say, from old houses. So pwede yan. It's just a matter. And then another thing is when we build these facilities and infrastructure, we have to consider the local carpenters, because this will give them jobs. Local carpenters, local artisans, local carvers, and suppliers of building materials.
Okay, what else are the investor developers doing wrong? Para lang malaman na nilang don't do this.
I think there is also what we call, aside from people, private sector businesses in the tourism industry should also be involved in protecting the environment, no? Because as you can see, there is a lot of negative impacts that tourism brings or does, no, to environment. No? Example of that would be resource mismanagement, no? Water, sewage, for example. Even the use of zoning. I mean the what do you call this? The application of zoning laws. No, there are spaces, public spaces, which have to be preserved for open access to the public. For example, or biodiversity laws.
Okay, well, no, that's interesting because time and again, because I was engaged by a developer in the United States before I got into tourism locally. And isa sa mga natutunan ko was wetlands. Kumbaga, in the US, wag mong gagalawin yung takbo ng tubig. You need to make sure it has an unobstructed, untarnished flow, etc. And in the Philippines, pag medyo, I remember getting into an argument with an architect because he wanted a straight line. He wanted to cut all the trees on the front of the beach and para straight line makita yung hilera ng mga cottages. And sabi ko, magkakamatayan dito pag pinaputol mo yung mga puno na yan. So the the financier sat in the middle and said, "Gentlemen, let's not kill each other. Let's have a compromise. Let's do a weeb, but we need to have some form into the setup. Let's do a weeb." And it got to the point where we actually had one cottage that had a tree on the veranda. Kumbaga sabi ko, you build a veranda around the tree, I will not allow you to cut the tree. So parang yung mga ganon, or yung pagkalkal ng lupa. In fact, in Coron, I think that's now the issue. This reclamation project there, turns out the DNR was allegedly sleeping on the job or pretending to be asleep on the job. Anyway, so matanong ko lang, Boboy, regarding yung sinabi mo, the introduction of materials. Like, a lot of resorts or developers, they bring in food, packaged materials from the cities to these remote destinations. And then, ayun, biglang nagtambaka na ang plastic, single-use bottles, bags, etc. And also the use of LPG in these kitchens. Kaya sabi ko parang mali yata yung ginawa natin noon. Kasi in my small place before, nagagatong kami. We used firewood, okay, dead trees, etc. What is your philosophy regarding that? The introduction of technology in terms of LPG, in terms of packaged foods versus buying locally.
Well, in tourism, there is what we call sustainable consumption and production. No? You only use what you need, and when you consume, you consume it in the most optimum or favorable condition. Now, let's take, for example, food. When you talk about sustainable tourism in the context of food, or maybe island resorts that serves food to visitors, meron tayong tinatawag na food miles. No, food miles is when it's the distance traveled by a food from the source to the table. No, so the longer the food miles, that means to say mas ano yung carbon footprint niya, mas malaki, di ba? Because when you travel, when you transfer, when you move food supplies, it involves logistics, tracking, services, packaging. What else? Maybe the use of cold storage, which uses energy. All these things. Now, in sustainable consumption and production, there's one of the concepts there is you grow your own food. No, it's the concept of farm to table, where you just, for example, a chef in a 5-star resort in an island needs spices or herbs. Well, he can easily get it from the kitchen, no? If he grows those kind of plants.
Yeah.
Which means the distance traveled by the food is just from the garden at the back of the resort, maybe a vacant space, to the kitchen of the resort. So less yung carbon footprint niya. So yeah. I think it's really a journey. No? I mean, if well, of course, sustainability doesn't happen overnight. But if tourism businesses start now, I think it will probably do good, no?
Boboy,
later in the coming days.
Would you endorse that to the future, developers? Because I'm speaking out of experience. When we put up when we put up Club Paradise, which is now Discovery Paradise, I remember time and again, food became the challenge, lalo na pag may bagyo. Or there is a full moon.
Yes.
And I said, it is not an accident that God made me attend all of these TLRC seminars where natuto ko sa crab fattening, tilapia racing, floating cages of talakitok and of lapu-lapu. So we did that. And then the next step was Pag talagang nagkakahirapan na, binibili ko na lahat ng mga biik sa barangay para puro lechon,
Yeah.
and impress na impress sa mga bisita. Kasi, wow, lechon every night. Hindi ko masabing lechon every night because walang isda eh. Okay, so would you endorse a program that requires future tourist destination developers and investors to have a tandem food production facility?
Yes, of course. That would be a very good move, no? If private resorts, for example, and hotels partner with local communities in growing food, because that would mean, well, number one is for the visitors, food will arrive fresh, right? Because the distance traveled is just short, no? The other thing is you minimize or you limit the packaging, and of course the third one is, the fourth one is it guarantees availability of food for the hotels and resorts, and of course it creates a sort of a local economy or village economy, because the profit stays within the village, no, within the community itself. It doesn't go out. It doesn't go somewhere else.
Okay, now what are the challenges for ecotourism in the Philippines? Is it governance, regulation, or is it lack of expertise in the field?
I think all of the above. All of what you said. I think all of what you said. But if we look at the ecotourism experience in the Philippines, it was introduced a long time ago in the Philippines. If I'm not mistaken, it was introduced in 1992. Although the concept...
Actually earlier, Boboi, 80s pa. 80s pa ginagawa.
Yeah, yes.
I did it in 89.
Yeah, but it wasn't. I was still maybe in college at the time, but it wasn't called ecotourism then. But anyway,
yeah.
I think what I would say the formalization of ecotourism was done in, if I'm not mistaken, 1998 during the first ecotourism congress in Bohol, where the participants defined what ecotourism is.
Okay,
and then during the time of President Estrada, he issued executive order. I think that was 111 in 1999, establishing the ecotourism agenda of the Philippines, and which was based from which the national ecotourism strategy of the DOT and DNR was based on. No, and then later on, of course, earlier than that, there was already the NIPAS, the National Integrated Protected Area System, which was expanded to become the eNIPAS, which establishes the guidelines, the system for protected areas in the Philippines. And by the way, before I forget, Cito, 2022 is the year of protected areas.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, the Philippines, when you say protected areas, the Philippines is on top of the countries in the world where that's high in percentage of endemism. No, endemism meaning the plants and animals are found in the Philippines only and nowhere else in the entire planet. No, so the year of the protected areas tayo ngayon, 2022, and June is in fact the month of the protected areas.
Wow, nakachamba pala kami, ano?
Yeah, I thought you were inviting me because of it. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you came in well recommended, and clearly you have an insight to all of this. And we will continue to reach out to you if you don't mind, because I think there's going to be a surge of people investing in tourism in the next 10 years. And I think many of these people need all the help they can. Kasi kailangan dito muna ako. Sabi ni Lord, dito muna ako sa media. Wag muna akong bumalik sa tourism. Anyway, Boboi, thank you very much for your time, for your inputs. And please expect our invitations in the future. And keep up the good work. You're still in Cebu, right?
I'm in Camotes Islands. It's part of Cebu province, but I'm here in Camotes Islands, another protected area.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I hope to get there one day because one of our kasambahay actually, siya yung bossing namin sa bahay. Siya yung kapitan sa bahay. She's from Camotes Island.
Wow.
So we will pay them a visit. Thank you very much, Boboi.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's always a privilege, Cito. Thank you and good morning once again.
Okay, that's Boboi Costas for our ecotourism segment. And now let's go for a break. And when we come back, we will be featuring someone, okay, listen to this, from the World Wildlife Fund. However, she's not going to be talking about animals, or at least that's our impression, because we were surprised to note that she, I think, will be speaking about sustainable consumption and production. So medyo jibe with what we were speaking with Boboi. Please continue to watch the program. We'll talk about that after the break. Welcome back to the program agenda. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to PLDT, Home Fiber Optic Internet, for their support. Our next guest, aside from being a project manager at World Wildlife Fund, she is a licensed environmental planner, a climate reality leader, and a registered nutritionist dietitian. And as I pointed out to you, the reason we noticed her was because of the term plant-based diets. And my wife said, why is the WWF talking about plant-based diet? Nagbabago na ba sila ng direksyon? Let's bring in our guest, Miss Melor-Rijk. Okay, Melor-Rijk. Melody, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sir Cito, and good morning to everyone who's watching and listening to us.
Okay,
So,
now, could you explain that to us? Because my wife was, said, you better look into this because it might be an error in the story. They said, well, let's find out.
Yeah, so Sir Cito, no, there's no error in that. So actually, WWF is previously known as World Wildlife Fund, because the initial advocacy of WWF is centered on conservation of species and wildlife. However, we changed our name to Worldwide Fund for Nature to promote a greater mandate that in order for us to protect species, we also need to protect the ecosystem. So that includes water, that includes climate and energy, that includes oceans, and of course, that would also include food. So there's no correction needed for WWF to be involved in food because we have been doing that for around 10 years now.
What's the connection or relevance or the reason for WWF shifting or including consumption or food in its profile?
Generally, when we talk about food, it's highly dependent on environment and our biodiversity. It creates, an enabling environment for us to produce our food. And if we conserve and preserve our environment, our food system will be more resilient to shocks and stresses, and it's also more resilient to climate change. So this really a direct connection to our food and our environment and biodiversity in general.
Which is what's happening right now, Melody, because of the Ukraine-Russia war. There is a shortage of wheat, there is a shortage of fuel, and then it has resulted from Ukraine, Russia, it migrated to Europe. Now it went down to Asia where we can't get corn, wheat, we can't get soya, we can't get sugar, we can't get palm oil, etc. Kumbaga, those are the political shock. And now we have the the environmental shock that's being caused by climate change.
Yes, sir. Actually, when we talk about food, people cannot really connect it with our environment, but actually our food is one of the major drivers for the deterioration of our nature. So majority of our land use is already devoted for agriculture. And with that conversion of land, we are also promoting biodiversity loss. So around 80% of our mammals and other bird species are already considered critically endangered because of their habitat loss. Secondly, when we talk about food also, it's also a contributor mainly to carbon emissions. So around 25 to 30% of our carbon emissions are solely because of food alone. And in terms of water use, more than 70% of our fresh water is already devoted to food production. So you see, with all of these statistics, it's really clear, crystal clear, that food production, if done unsustainably, can really put us in jeopardy. And we are already doing a lot of extraction of resources.
Yeah, and at the moment, we even, in spite of all of these difficulties, we are wasting an estimated 25% of our global food is wasted. They're thrown or just dumped into garbage pits, etc. Now, the word plant-based, because I might be suspected or accused of promoting my agenda because I am 1 month old, 1 month and 2 days old as a plant-based individual. after going through an 80-20 program for several months, I decided, let's not kid ourselves. Let's just throw all the meat out. People might say, ano ba yan? Fad ba yan? Pauso lang ba yan? That this plant-based diet, I don't want it to come from me. As a worldwide, alisin ko na yung wildlife.
Worldwide fund.
Worldwide
yeah,
fund. Okay. Well, as a manager at the World Wildlife Fund or whatever, what's the significance of plant-based diets? Because you're also a dietitian and nutritionist.
Yes. So actually in WWF, we had the study in 2021 that we do not use the term plant-based, but rather planet-based diets. So actually, it's not really a specific diet per se. We are not promoting any kind of diet, but rather it's a diet that can promote a win-win situation for both our health and our planet. So undoubtedly, when we talk about vegetarianism and veganism, they are really superior in terms of preserving and helping our environment. But in terms of health and in terms of how do we realistically do that, it's actually that question that would raise a lot of a lot of controversy and a lot of considerations in mind, because there's a culture and tradition angle. There's also the price and everything. So when we talk about planet-based diets, it's really consumption of majority of plant-based food relative to your animal sources. So we are not really saying that you go strict vegan or totally eliminate meat, because at the end of the day, we also need specific vitamins and minerals that are coming from meat, red meat per se.
Okay, so
when
go ahead. So what's the direction?
Yeah, for us, when we talk about planet-based diets, it's really more plants than your animal sources, and it's more of really eating a variety of foods. And generally here in the Philippines, we already have that, actually, the Pinggang Pinoy. And if you just follow the Pinggang Pinoy, you're already on your journey towards planet-based diets. Because when you talk about meats, it's not, you don't need a lot for the whole day. It's around 15 to 20% protein. And it's not necessarily coming from plants, animals rather. So you can have other sources. You have your beans, you have your legumes, you have your lentils. And generally, that's the way to go, because for livestock production, it's really a big emitter of greenhouse gases. So number one would be your beef production. That is around 14 to 15% carbon emissions because of the
which is primarily in the US and Western countries, because in the Philippines,
Yes.
I think our beef production is largely still range-based instead of feedlots.
Yes, and but we see the trend based from the statistics coming from FNRI that we are consuming a lot of meat. And we are consuming also a lot of protein. So it's not just only beef, but we also have pork, we have chicken. So those are the things that we see also here in the Philippines. So planet-based diets, generally it promotes lessening non-communicable diseases, those that we get from our lifestyle and our food, such as heart diseases, diabetes, kidney diseases. So that's what we promote in WWF.
Okay, now having said all of that, Melody, how do you implement it or promote it in the Philippines? Because the irony is, sa totoo lang, Filipinos know about planet-based diets or less meat, more plant-based, etc. And it is part of our history. But because of the invasion of Western culture and media, we've lost that. In fact, in speaking to Boboi, our previous guest, it became evident, sabi ko, in our days, we used to cook with firewood and in clay pots. Now it's all LPG, everything is processed meat, etc. How do you get the young people to get back to that? To, the slow cook? Because I remember,
Slow
was
food,
it
yeah.
Tagle or something, a chef in Pampanga who actually even tried to popularize the firewood slow cook luto ni nanay or luto ni lola.
Mhm, mhm. Well, for WWF here in the Philippines, it's actually just starting. It's not as big as the Western countries that promote, planet-based diets. But what we do is also, you're right in saying that we actually inject education as one of our ways, environmental education or education for sustainable development. One of the ways for us to reach out and to make the public be aware of the detrimental effects of eating too much of your livestock, and in terms of your health, not only for the environment but also for your health.
Yeah,
And
but
at the same time, we are also working with governments, and we are starting to talk to them that actually when you shift your diets according to the IPCC, you will be lessening the carbon emissions by 20%.
okay,
So
but Melody, what would be the first steps? Because I think there is you don't have a mountain to climb to convince
yeah.
Filipinos that their mothers, fathers are suffering from diabetes, dying of heart attacks,
Mhm.
and that they should do the shift. But what are the first steps? What tips can you give our viewers
Mhm.
to at least progress? Kasi you mentioned pinggan Pinoy.
Pinoy.
Actually,
Yeah.
hindi ko yata nadinig yung pinggan Pinoy na yan, Melody.
Yeah, it's actually our food guide. It's actually our food guide. It's our official food guide here in the Philippines that would provide you with a guide on a per meal basis. So you have your plate, and you can see there how many. For example, more than 1/4 of your food should be fruits and vegetables or rice, and
Mhm.
only a little bit of your meat. So what we can do is actually basically for children to start that, it's to strengthen their nutrition education, because I think that's number one for us to, you know one of the gaps that we saw when we are doing our sustainable consumption and production project is that there's really limited information that are being circulated.
Well, that's a good point, Melody. And I was just about to
Yeah,
say,
for the children.
or add to that. That's a good point. I was just about to add to that that
Mhm.
are having redefined your scope and your title
Mhm.
for WWF. Um, are you now considering going into the entrepreneurial enablement? Kasi when you were talking about the food, etc., food choices, it occurred to me, it's not easy to find variety of vegetables.
Mhm.
Because if you go to your neighborhood gulay vendor, they present what seems to be a lot, but when you
Mhm.
study it for a month, I already got to the point where, Loling, pare-pareho yata gulay mo dito ha. Wala ka bang
Mhm.
ganitong gulay, variety? Is there going to be a possibility in the future that WWF will help people set up stores that give choice, real choice? Because, you mentioned lentils. I'm familiar with
Mhm.
lentils, but I wonder how many Filipinos really understand that
Understand,
lentil
yeah.
is the alternative to meat protein.
Mhm. Yeah, Sir Cito, it's not really something that it's not possible for us. And we are for market transformation. WWF is also heavy on that. So
Mm.
in terms of supporting entrepreneurs, in the future, definitely, we have projects that would support social enterprises that would help us to achieve also the overall conservation goals of WWF. So yes, Sir Cito, definitely if there will be an opportunity for us to assist and help such enterprises, why not?
Okay, so we were talking about what would be the first steps. We have about 2-3 minutes. So, Melody, if you don't mind, well, I don't know if you're a plant-based person, but what would be the first steps? Because me and my wife, we did the 80-20 approach, 80% plant-based, 20% meat. Then eventually I started removing eggs, and then next thing was, let's try vegetarian, and that's where we are. Kasi ayaw pumayag ng asawa ko vegan. Vegan na ako nagalit pa Gusto niya vegetarian.
Actually, Sir Cito, what you did was the correct way to go. You just start to eliminate or lessen your intake. Because personally, I'm not a vegan nor vegetarian, but I lessen already what I usually consume before. I rarely eat beef. So I rarely really prepare beef based food in our household. And my daughter now is actually vegetarian, so she's.
Does it help that you're married to a Scandinavian?
Yeah, well, for him, it's a different story. It's actually quite difficult because it's really a cultural and traditional aspect also that we have to consider. But yeah, that's for me. That's what I did. It's not an overnight thing, Sir Cito. It's a gradual process, and each and everyone has their choice and has their own journey when it comes to that. But really, right now, the easiest way to go is to diversify your food. Don't eat just pure meat or just eating a certain kind of food. So diversify, and we have a lot of fruits and vegetables also. We have a lot of indigenous fruits and vegetables, that is really coming from Filipinos, coming from the Philippines. So I think we must patronize those.
Okay, last but not the least, how do people get to know more about what WWF is all about? Kasi alam mo, pag WWF, World Wrestling Federation na naalala ko because of my generation. And then it became World Wildlife Fund. And now,
Worldwide Fund for Nature.
Fund for Nature. Okay. So, but
yes.
Is there a website? Where do they go to? Facebook?
Yes. Actually, if you want to know more about WWF and the projects that we are actually implementing here in the Philippines, you can visit our website at wwf.org.ph. And you can also visit our social media pages. We have on Facebook, WWF Philippines. We have also Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and also LinkedIn. So WWF Philippines, you just search.
Okay, I guess the shift also, or the widening of the scope, removes the Western politics out of the movement, if I'm not mistaken, and it is more inclusive because hindi naman natin problema yung mga balyena na pinoproblema nila ng ibang organization. Our problem here is protecting our environment and the people. Okay, thank you very much, Melody.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Okay, and I hope to see you in the future. Talk to you more here on Agenda. That's that is our guest, Melor-Rijk of the Worldwide Fund for Nature, and she was talking to us about the different concerns, the expanded profile of the WWF, which also now covers sustainable consumption. Kung kayo po ay nag-iisip, Cito, ano ba yung ginagawa mo na yan? Talking about agriculture, sustainability, food consumption. Well, I read the news this morning, and as you saw in the news, chicken prices are up. Pork prices have long been up. Rice prices have been up. And the tragedy is we also spend so much water for watering our gardens that's full of flowers that you can't eat, etc., fertilizer on plants you can't eat. But if you replace all of that with vegetables, you would be saving a ton of money. Let's go to our blessing for the week from Romans chapter 15, verse 13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you may abound in hope. Iba na ang may pag-asa. Thank you for watching Agenda, and please keep it here on One News PH.